The failure of Silicon Valley Bank, the most crucial financial institution for the world's largest innovation cluster, is, as Y Combinator President Gary Tan put it, an extinction-level event for entrepreneurs.
YC has funded about 3,000 active startups right now. I would guess that this affects more than 1,000 startups, and about a third of those startups will not be able to make payroll in the next 30 days.
There will be 1,000 videos created about this in the next days, weeks, and months, but I'm simply going to offer a real-time narration of what the final day in the middle of everything was like and discuss where we go from here. So early Thursday, March 9th, everyone in the valley was taken aback when SVB's Silicon Valley Bank stock price plummeted by 60%. What occurred was SVB startled everyone when they announced a $1.8 billion loss on a bond fire sale and that they were selling stock to obtain extra cash. That was unfortunate timing since cryptocurrency bank Silvergate Capital had recently gone bankrupt, and those contagion worries spread to Wall Street, which lost $55 billion in market value in a single day. So about 10 a.m. PDT on March 9, I began hearing whispers that some of the large funds were urging their portfolios to exit SVB as soon as possible. Some of the industry's titans include Founders Funds, Sequoia, Union Square, YC, and Iconic, to mention a few. I don't identify them to embarrass them, but these are the people that backed the biggest startups with billions of dollars sitting at SVB. And you have to pay attention when that much money is leaving the bank. About the same time, Silicon Valley broke into two camps. Some discovered that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. If you all just relax, everything will be okay. So these people were saying, sit tight, we can all just get through this together, which was true. But there was another group of people who realized that if you're a startup, there's no downside to moving your money out of SVB. And if there's a 1% chance that SVB will fail, you have to do it as a portfolio manager to protect yourself and your shareholders. Silicon Valley was in a tremendous prisoner's dilemma, and if everyone else is already breaking out, you can't be the last one to just sit there and rot. So we had this classic bank run where beliefs became self-fulfilling prophecies, and it's not about fundamentals in that environment. While SVB was extending a lot of hazardous loans and getting crushed by rising interest rates, they would have been okay without this. But any bank will fail if everyone requests for their money at the same moment. So, some of the early venture capitalists who saw this coming started pinging their founders in the morning on Thursday to advise them to get out of SVB. And naturally, SVB became swamped with calls, and the site went down, making it impossible to speak with anybody on the phone. Even if you did get through to SVB, there was another issue. Many businesses don't even have a backup bank account into which they may send money. So there was a frenzied rush to create secondary accounts at First Republic or JP Morgan. But the difficulty is that it takes several days to set them. As a result, founders were left scrambling to create these Mercury or Brex accounts on the same day. According to speculations, several of Brex's investors who stood to benefit the most were among the first to advise their firms to flee SVB. If so, this is a wild side story we'll hear a lot more about in the future. But for the time being, Mercury and Brex were getting so much volume that they were being overloaded and falling offline at times. In this pandemonium, founders were even moving money to their own personal bank accounts, which carries a lot of dangers, and some founders even resorted to physically traveling down to an SVB office and withdrawing millions of dollars in cashier's checks. There have been reports of long lineups at nearby banks with these founders clutching millions of dollars. It's bizarre to think about, but if these founders had lost a check or been pulled up at gunpoint, their businesses would have folded right away. As you might expect, I witnessed several frantic public group chat threads with founders attempting to determine first how genuine this is, and then after they understood it was an existential crisis, thinking through all of their alternatives in real time. About 1 p.m. PDT, venture capitalists convened an emergency meeting to try to make sense of everything and provide guidance to entrepreneurs in a more programmatic and meaningful manner. Things began to deteriorate at 2 p.m. PDT. Outgoing wires from SVB were stopped, and the rest of the founders and venture capitalists began to notice what was going on. But by 3 or 4 p.m. PDT, it was just too late to do anything. They were only wiring at a time, expecting it would clear in the morning and they'd be safe. By the end of the 9th of March, entrepreneurs and corporations had attempted to withdraw $42 billion from SVB. But things got much wilder the next day, March 10. The founders and venture capitalists awoke that morning to the shocking news that SVB had collapsed and had been taken over by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So now companies' assets were frozen at SVB indefinitely, forcing them into emergency planning mode. And I'm seeing panic text messages from founders, and their firms decided to hold another emergency meeting on what to do about it. And I have to say before I go any further that I'm not a financial advisor or a lawyer. You must conduct your own research as a startup, but this is what many entrepreneurs did. But before we go any further into the story, welcome to Economic News. If you're enjoying the content so far, please do like the video and subscribe with all notifications turned on by ringing the bell icon so that you won't miss any updates about ramifications of the shutdown of Silicon Valley Bank. Now, let us get back to the video. The first step was determining their actual exposure to SVB as well as their liquidity. Many founders have some credit elsewhere, such as in Brex or cash on hand at another bank. Several founders have successfully transferred their SVB funds from an on-balance sheet account, such as check-ins or savings, to an off-balance sheet account held by a separate bank. In that situation, even if it takes some time to transfer their funds, they should be assured to be made whole. So, there's something accounting to find out what money is truly accessible when it's time to make payroll. Some of this is due to the FDIC's $250,000 insurance, which was delivered on Monday, March 13th, but is insufficient to cover payment for many businesses. Many businesses want to collect on their accounts receivable as soon as possible in order to get cash in the door and ensure that any incoming cash does not end up in SVB accounts. To make ends meet, many businesses are having to go supplier by supplier and choose which are must-have suppliers who will continue to be paid and which are vendors who will have to delay payments. Many of these suppliers will agree to defer payments, as will creditors if interest payments are required. And corporations will then create daily cash flow reports to continue constant monitoring. It's a last-ditch effort to make payroll since failing to do so exposes the firm to a variety of dangers, ranging from employee litigation to employees just quitting. Yet, if absolutely required, businesses might take the difficult step of informing in advance and furloughing staff to delay compensation. There is a lot of contingency planning going on at the board level right now on various possibilities if certain funds are not available as soon as hoped. Finally, as a precaution, corporations are consulting with their investors to devise strategies for bridging financings in the event that everything fails. But keep in mind that if half of all companies have their assets blocked on SVB, so do half of all venture capitalists. And if assets are frozen for an extended period of time, there is only so much that firms can do. And the ensuing weeks and months will be carnage. If there is one silver lining, it is that this disaster is so pervasive that it requires the government and the FDIC to work together to set things right. After all, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people's livelihoods here, as well as the possibility of contagion. There were already rumors that other banks would be next. This is a live scenario, and no one knows what is going to happen at the time. But I'm going to send along some unconfirmed information that's moving around the valley right now that gives me optimism. According to reports, the Senate Banking Committee is urging the White House to discover and buy SVB assets in order to make account holders as whole as appropriate. It would be the best case scenario because, as previously said, the longer this goes on, the more firms will go bankrupt. The rumor on the street is that Morgan Stanley is in the West Wing, and others have speculated that Wells Fargo may also be interested. Again, none of this has been proven. This is merely a rumor, and it's likely that when this video is released, you'll know more than I do. In any event, I believe the chances of finding a buyer for SVB are strong because the asset is valuable. A major component of SVB's balance sheet is made up of government-backed securities, which may be sold swiftly and recoup a large number of deposits. SVB has around $165 billion in deposits, and some predict that the mix of cash, securities, and loan sales may yield $180 billion, more than enough to cover depositors, and potentially even half of that as early as this week. In the best case scenario, SVB's losses would be restricted to stock and bondholders rather than depositors. So, if a corporation expects a future loan from the bank, I believe it is safe to infer that it is improbable. But there is some promise here, which is fortunate because startups are already difficult for founders and staff. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a comment down below stating your opinions on the current situation that Silicon Valley Bank and many other banks in the United States are facing right now. Also, if you have time, do check out our other videos on the channel that also talks about the world economy as well as information that may make you more informed. Take care now and see you in the next video.